All right, hello everyone. This is Professor Jeremiah Alioso, and this is the first time that I'm doing a podcast. Welcome to Sir Juicy Jerry on podcast, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly. Yeah, but anyway, what we're going to talk to about today, and this is actually for multicultural diversity in the workplace, for the topic of social category difference. All right, and during the last time, I have asked my students to drop me some questions related to some issues pertaining to social category differences. And there's a lot of things that we can talk to. And maybe I'm going to be having this podcast for the entire, who knows, probably 30 minutes. So I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. All right. So I am very much excited. And of course, over the weekend, I was able to receive my book that I have ordered on Edric, and the book on multicultural diversity in the workplace. This is authored by the author, Mylene Yung. All right, this is the book, and I'm very much excited to read this one. And there's a lot of topics related to multicultural diversity in the workplace. And this is actually what we're going to talk about. We're gonna bring up some gender issues in the workplace, age issue, generation issues, social class, fact of culture, the foreign worker, race, disabled workers, part-time workers, management and leadership, LGBT issues, among the many other topics that we could find on this book from Edric, written by Mylene Yung. But last week, we were discussing about the social category difference when it comes to race, ethnicity, and nationality. And I let my students watch a YouTube clip on COT channel, and there was actually an activity that allows that person to guess the nationality, ethnicity, and the nationality of the respondents. And we were caught by surprise that, and it only goes to show that we should not judge people, because sometimes we are wrong on our judgments. And it's actually a learning curve, learning a lot about the race, the ethnicity, and nationality of people. And sometimes we have built our own stereotype of how people would look like when it comes to their race, ethnicity, and nationality. But because of many different factors, people may not necessarily look their nationality because of multiculturalism and mixed race. No. And speaking of which, I just remember now that since it's October, I am supposed to wear a costume for this podcast. But anyway, you won't be able to see that unless you watch me on YouTube. I'm supposed to be wearing my Chinese costume because I was able to find that on my cabinet. And just because I have been recently seeing a lot of posts about children wearing different national costume, and so why not? No, but anyway, I forgot about it, and I'm only wearing t-shirt and jacket, and the weather is kind of cold here. So let's go ahead and start. Okay, so we will begin with our discussion or talking on topics about class. There's actually 6 category class as described by Joseph Coles and Dennis Gilbert. And even without looking into this category, we are aware that the society has divided people into classes. And this classes has something to do with probably their education, occupation, and income status. And sometimes economically speaking, it's also, or this would be helpful to identify people by their class. However, it's not about class always. Economically speaking, yes, it can help that we identify people through class, just like with what happened on the onset of pandemic, that people were categorized whether they are uh, from the lower income status or underclass, or we call the marginalized poor, or whether you're on the middle class, or you are on the upper class. And we have observed that the people from the lower class or the underclass were able to receive ayuda, right? And the middle class were clamoring that they are unable to receive their ayuda, even though that they are paying taxes. And and the COVID-19 pandemic has only left the upper class, the ones surviving, because even on how many months of lockdown, initially it was only 14 days, but eventually it was extended, that they are able to survive even if their jobs were put on hold. But the middle class were left suffering because they are living in a hand-to-mouth existence. And what more with the lower class? Okay, so we see on the news that they are really begging for help. We see the farmers, the drivers asking for help because they are, having, say, for example, 200 or 100 pesos earnings a day. But if you will put on hold their jobs, they won't be able to bring food on the table. All right, so it's very important that we are aware of these social classes, because we would be able to identify which class really needs help. And however, our level of respect should be the same all across, because there are some people who would only respect those who are in the upper class. People say that the richer you are, the more respect that you get. But I guess that it all boils down that we have to respect everyone regardless of their class. All right. So let's see if my students were able to send me questions related to class. Because last time I have asked my students, I have mentioned to them that I will be recording my very first podcast, and I asked them to drop me questions related to this topic. And I see questions on age, but we're going to talk on that later. Gender, socialization, exceptionality. All right, I would just like to read here an input from Syra Marie Nunez. We have different group of society where we belong. Yes, the society where you belong respects you as you are, but why did the group of society where you belong make a judgment in other group of society? Why they gave them their trauma, anxiety, or depression? We are all equal, even though we have our own race. But why people make fun and disrespect them? Aren't they ashamed of themselves? And it is actually a very valid observation from Siren. And yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to agree that some people, no, are basing their level of respect with the status and I guess that for the rich, I think that they are put into the position by which they have to make use of their resources wisely, and that they should be helping the people from the marginalized sector to be able to get up, to be able to have jobs, to be able to have a sustainable living. And the people from the lowest rank should also be able to have fair access to different resources so that they'll be able to get by with their daily living. And it's not to put judgment on them, because sometimes they are born that way, and we cannot also judge in the same way the people who were born with a silver spoon. They may just be extra blessed or very lucky to have that kind of life. But if we only work hard, we will be in the place where we are ought to be. All right. So nice observation. And another one from, although this is from Laila May Lusterio, in terms of class or social class, what do you think the world will look like if we do not have social classes, or people are all in the same socioeconomic status? That is a very nice question. And I feel though that I'm put on the spot, or I feel that this is some kind of a Miss Universe question, but nice one though. Thank you, Laila May Lusterio. What will the world look like if we are on the same socioeconomic status? Meaning to say that we're all the same, no one is poor, no one is rich. We're all the same. Or if we would be rich, everybody is rich. Or if we would be poor, then everybody's poor. And I guess that we could coin from the song Tatsulok. You know, I'm not familiar though with the lyrics, but that's a song of Bamboo. Let's try to Google that out. And I think that's something that has something to do with fairness and equality. And like I maybe it's this line: hindi pula't dilaw ang tunay na magkalaban, ang kulay at tatak ay di siyang dahilan. Hanggat marami ang lugmok sa kahirapan at ang hustisya ay para lang sa mayaman. And that is very true with what's happening in our society. And I guess that that's kind of depressing, that it's only the rich who gets the justice and the poor gets the injustice. But it shouldn't be that way. Okay, and it may be summarized on the song, habang may tatsulok at sila ang nasa tuktok, hindi matatapos itong gulo. That is true. And maybe the answer to your question is, if we would all be equal, then maybe there's peace. Or maybe that everybody's happy, everybody's helping with each other, rather than to be in this world where there's so much inequality and we are on a race towards being on top of the other. All right. And yeah, nice realization. Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's see if there's some more about social class. And I guess that even before then, many centuries ago, there's picture, or there's scenario of inequality. We see the slaves being the image of the poor. We're in when you're born poor, you will die poor, and when you're rich, you're very lucky. Okay, and the rich can buy the poor to become slaves and to serve them forever. And we're very lucky because we live in this modern times that it's not that way. But I guess that in some other parts of the world, there's still forms of slavery, but it's not as drastic as it used to be. All right, so let's proceed with age and generation. All right, the social category of age is a distinction made between people in different age groups. While age can be defined as how long someone has been alive, societies throughout time and space have categorized people through these different age groups. In other words, age is seen as social construction. While there was little distinction between different age groups in the past, in today's society, there are numerous age groups. And considering these different age groups, I think that there's gap in between, because there's differences in the way that people live in a certain generation. And I guess that we should all be aware that we are dominated by the Gen Z generation, which are, I guess, the generation of my students, people who are born between the period of 1995 to 2012, and that is according to my source, and that the people who were born between the 1980s to 1994 are the millennials, and those are your titos and titas, and that's actually my generation. And obviously, I'm getting older. All right, and before I can vividly recall how the older generation, maybe my parents, the generation of my parents, in which they are the senials or the generation X, and my grandparents were the baby boomers, and there was always a comparison of generation, mentioning stories of how they lived during those dark times and how the days were different as compared to the modern day age. And I can now relate how people are different, how generations are different, because obviously there are changes in terms of on the way people live. There's like during our younger years, we were not so much accustomed to the modern technology. But now that my students are on the Gen Z, I realized that these generations were the technology babies. They were born with a lot of convenience of life. When when I try to compare it to my generation, I realized that my childhood was filled with so much joy, playing on the streets, playing tumbang preso, bahay-bahayan, Chinese garter, and pico, and without thinking much a lot of what's happening nowadays. And it's just not fair to compare because things have changed. And the generations of today, I mean, when you look around your pamangkins, or even you, my students who are listening right now, are born or have grown to playing computer games, playing or using mobile phone, and that it is part of our everyday life. And that's how the generation has changed the way we live today. And people say that age is but a number. People age differently. And we have to realize that sometimes their physical age does not match their real age. Sometimes people look older than they actually do, or the otherwise. And you have to be mindful that sometimes asking of people's age could be offensive, most especially for the older generation. And they think that they don't want their age be broadcast. Lucky for me, because although I'm 30 plus, people say that I don't look 30 plus and I don't age at all. All right, so maybe I just look and feel young because I am surrounded by younger generation. I am always smiling. I am not worrying about my problems. That's why I look young. All right. But anyway, we should not also make judgment about people's age. All right. There's an interesting question here about age. And I feel that it's kind of a Miss Universe question. All right. Let me just check that one out. All right. Hold on. This is from Piola Crizel Salivia. What can younger generation do to make the older generation live more easily aside from using technology? What can younger generation do to make the older generation live more easily? Okay, yeah. Just because because obviously there are some older generation who are having difficulty getting by or getting used to with the technology, because even though that they are old, they still have to get used to using this technology and different application, most especially. And I'm sure that you have uh, observed that with your teachers who are from the older generation, and they are having a difficulty using this modern technology, using the gadgets, using laptops and different applications, especially with the online classes during the onset of the pandemic and the introduction of online classes. People have a difficulty with how to use the Zoom, how to use the Google Meet, how to screen share, and even how to use or how to order online. But I guess that we live in a society by which we could coexist, such that the older generation can teach the younger generation the beauty of their generation, while the younger generation can teach the older generation this modern technology, so that we could all live happily, we could coexist. Okay. And there's, I'm looking for that one interesting question as well about the generation or age gap, because there's always age gap. It's always an issue. All right, this one is from Monica Abulencia. In terms of age generation, most of the people say listen to them because they are older. In relation to this saying, why do you think that most people value the opinions of the older generation? That is a very nice question. Thank you, Monica. All right, so because I'm not sure if this would be true with the millennials, but maybe the baby boomers or the senials will not agree on this. But I mean, the values before is that because the older generations were generations or years ahead of the younger generation, the notion is that they have lived their life. They have learned so much from their experience, and that the younger generation should listen to them, should believe in them because they are old, because they are more wiser. But with the modern times, I guess that this is not appropriate at all, because just like with what I have said a while ago, that we have to live in a world by which we could validate each other's existence, and that no one is superior of the other. It is not true that just because you are older than the other is you are more superior, you're more wiser than the other. We have to live in a world by which we listen to each other, because I believe that there's a lot of learnings or things that we can learn from the younger generation. Just like in the principle of education, it should not just be one-sided, because I myself is a living proof that I have learned a lot by listening to my students. My students are way younger than me, but I feel that the younger generation also has valuable experience by which the older generation could learn or have key takeaways from their stories and experience. Because like, I mean, it's not just about technology, but there's a lot of things. Let's say, for example, the older generation have learned and are enjoying TikTok because of the younger generation. I mean, who would have thought that the older generation would be able to appreciate TikTok? But initially, TikToks were enjoyed by the younger generation, and the older generation were bashing the kids, why they are always on their mobile phone, dancing and doing crazy stuff. But when this was introduced to our generation, the titos and the titas, and even your lolos and lolas, I mean, look, I mean, everybody's happy, everybody's enjoying, everybody's dancing. And that is something, or that's just one example by which we could learn from each other. I mean, the older generation may be able to teach or share the valuable lessons they have learned in the past, and maybe about things that they did something wrong and learn their lesson. And maybe the younger kids could teach things like this, by which also the older generation can feel that it's valuable and it's also important. All right. So we see that we really could coexist. All right. Next is religion. It's a system of beliefs and practices as well as actions directed towards entities which are above men. Religion is an organized system of ideas about spiritual sphere or the supernatural. All right. Oftentimes, religion is a conservative or a taboo topic. Religion also does not have a face. It can also be diverse because people have various spiritual beliefs. And it would be wrong to make a generalization, like just because we are predominantly Catholic, it's not safe to assume that everybody in your class is Catholic. We have to be mindful that each one of us would have different spiritual belief. I mean, some would even be atheist or agnostic. They may not even believe in God, or their higher being is, or they believe maybe, or their God would be stone or a flower or a tree or the sun. All we have to do is respect, because at the end of the day, we really cannot please or put our belief into theirs. That's their opinion. But I mean, considering that of the many countries, each country would have different religion. I mean, yes, there's major religion or official religion, but it does not mean that it is the religion of everybody. Okay, so and in the hospitality industry or in tourism and hospitality industry, it's very important that we are at least aware of the nature and practices of this different religious order, because it's one way of being respectful. Like, let's go to the most common type of thing, like with the food. Different religious order would have different practices when it comes to the food. Like with the Iglesia ni Cristo, they are not eating food with blood. So it would be disrespectful if you would offer that dinuguan to your friend or family member or customers who is from the Iglesia ni Cristo. In the same way with the Sabadista, right? That they don't eat a particular type of food, or I think that they don't eat pork, just like with the Muslim. All right. So it's nice to have an understanding. It's nice to have an awareness. All right. So, but it's more than just food. And also, when we put this into the context of the workplace, I think that the employer should also be aware of these things. Just like with the international convention that I have attended for the Food Hotel Asia, I have seen how they have integrated multiculturalism and diversity in that event, because I have seen they are offering different types of food that would cater to different nationality and different religious belief. I mean, it is very understandable and it's very expected, because the Food Hotel Asia was held in Singapore, or is being held every 2 years in Singapore. And considering the nature of Singapore, it's a perfect place and venue to hold that international convention, because Singapore is a melting pot of many different cultures. I mean, they are a conglomeration of Chinese, Indian, European, Asians, and many different types of nationality. And so naturally, they would also have different religious belief. And so going back to that example, I see on the program that they are also incorporating a facility by which the Muslims could take a break, take a prayer. And it's also evident in the many different activities of the event. All right, let's check on the Google Classroom if there are questions about religion. All right, so just allow me to skim this GCR. I wish I would have a guest here for me to be able to share some of their experience or opinion, but maybe on our next podcast, I'll be able to bring people to have conversations about this very interesting topic. I have seen here a question from Charisse and Pagatpat. If there will be a chance to have a spiritual government in the future instead of having politics that we currently have, in that way, can it change the world system of or a particular country? Can it take away the immoral practices of human beings that are displeasing in the eyes of great creator? What are the possible issues that may arise in this matter? Is it really possible, or deception and chaos must occur first before people realize the real purpose of life? That's nice question. But let's try to dissect, because there's a lot of questions and we have only few time left. But anyway, thank you, Charisse Pagatpat, for that interesting question. Spiritual government rather than political government. Oh, that's kind of deep. A spiritual government, or also your question is also proposing a homogeneous grouping when it comes to religion. I guess that even if we become homogeneous in our spiritual belief, I think that there's still variation when it comes to interpretation. Because if you try to look around, even if your community or your family would have the same belief, there are still different interpretations of that belief. And I don't think that it could change the order of things, and it could lead to world peace. Because I think that even if I recall the answer of who's this Miss Grand International who represented the Philippines, it's Parul Shah. And she's talking about a community or a family or a home with different religion, and that it could also exist. And ultimately that peace can be achieved even if we have different religious order. So I don't think that it is necessary that we have a common or if we would have a spiritual government rather than a political government. I think that we could still achieve harmony, we could still achieve peace, even if we are different, and that having a homogeneous spiritual belief will not address chaos. All right, so that's nice observation. All right, so let's see if there's other questions on religion. Okay, let's see. Religious, for this is from Leila Erica Maniaco. All right, religious and secular organizations fund campaigns and studies that claim that LGBTQ people can change their sexual orientation or gender identity because something is wrong. So concerning that, can gay people change their sexual orientation or gender identity? All right, so although you have mentioned of religious and secular organizations, but I guess that the question is more of gender. And I think that this is a really complicated and long topic. So I am sparing this one, and maybe I could address your question on my next podcast. All right, so we will get back to your query, Miss Leila Maniaco. All right, so I guess there's no other question about religion. Okay, so this is from, just to sum this up, from Jamil Randolo. We have watched a video of them guessing or judging a person in front of them during our prior talk. My question is, what aspects of your culture do you find interesting? Or do you have a good understanding of your own culture? So let me just put this into the perspective of Jamil asking me about the Philippine culture. All right. So my answer to your question is there are many different facets, or there are many different aspects of the Philippine culture that is very interesting. And truly the saying, it's more fun in the Philippines, holds true of how diverse our culture is. There's a lot when you try to look around. I mean, considering the fact that Philippines is composed of 7,641 islands, it is very obvious that we have a variety of culture, and our rich history is very influential with our rich culture and tradition. I mean, we have traces or influences coming from the Spaniards, from the Japanese, from the Malay, from the Indonesians, and that what's makes it interesting. And do you have a good understanding of your own culture? I can say yes, but I believe that life is a continuous quest for learning and understanding of our culture. And because of the nature of culture being progressive, being dynamic, it's forever changing. There's so much to learn about our own culture that would only makes it interesting to learn more every day. Okay, and it's also nice to share the good news about our culture, because one characteristic of culture is that it can be shared to other people. We see that when we have visitors, most especially the foreigners, we are very happy to share to them our rich culture. You know, when we have foreigners coming into our country, we're teaching them how to dance, our cultural dances. We're teaching them how to eat our delicacies. We're teaching them or showing them our Filipino brand of hospitality. And I guess that's what makes it unique. All right. So I invite everyone to explore more, understand and appreciate our own culture. And how time flies, it's already 12:30, and I guess that's the end of my podcast for today. And that leads me to have another session of podcast to talk about exceptionality, sex, and gender, which is a far more interesting topic. And I invite you all to drop me questions so that I could address those, and so that our podcast will be far more interesting. So I hope that you continue to support my podcast and also on my YouTube channel. That's at Sir Juicy Jerry. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until our next blog, or until our next podcast. This is Professor Jeremiah Alyoso, and thank you very much and have a good one. Bye.